All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's Citizens Climate Lobby University's lesson. Tonight we have Dan Rizza from Climate Central on the line. Dan's going to show us a new tool that they have developed called the Surging Seas Risk Finder. And it's really going to be something that a lot of our volunteers will be able to assimilate into their lobbying, whether it be members of Congress or members of the media, or even when you're doing outreach events. So just a couple of housekeeping notes here. Tonight's lesson, as all of them, are being recorded. Dan's going to be sharing his screen tonight, and sometimes that can present problems based on your internet connection, but you can always go back and watch it in real time, and shouldn't be any problem afterwards. So keep that in mind. If you're having some issues watching, you can always go back and check it out. Well, we will stop for questions at the end, and at that time, if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can press *1 or click the little microphone symbol next to your name if you're muted online. And you can also use the chat window as well. So if you don't want to talk in front of a bunch of folks, you can type in the chat window as well with your question there. So I am going to turn it over to Dan. And Dan, if you would, before you get started, just give us a little bit of introduction about yourself and Climate Central. That would be a great place to start. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ricky. Thanks for your interest in our work and the invitation to demonstrate. I work at Climate Central in Princeton, New Jersey. We're a nonprofit research and communications group based in Princeton and New York, dedicated to studying and communicating the impacts of climate change locally and nationally. And we don't take any policy positions. We don't advocate for any particular positions or for legislation. We simply do research and provide information and web tools for anyone to use publicly on our website. I work on the program on sea level rise, and over the last 2 or 3 years, we've developed the Surging Seas Risk Zone Map and Risk Finder, along with other web tools, to help the coastal planning community and the general public and leaders better understand sea level rise and coastal flood risks. And so I will be demonstrating Surging Seas tonight. It's a publicly available tool so you can go online to sealevel.climatecentral.org and interact with the tool and see what's of interest to you. You can also download lots of data. So just before I start, I'm available to support the use of the tool. So if any groups or people have questions with the tool, they can call me, and I can answer questions or guide you to the right part of the tool. We're funded by large foundations such as the Kresge Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, Schmidt Family Foundations, and these foundations wanted us to provide this screening level web tool to the coastal planning community. Before I get into the tool, I wanted to give you a sense of who's using the tool and how they're using it. We often hear from town, city, or state, or regional, or even federal planners who download data from the web tool to help inform their decision making or their studies, vulnerability assessments, or planning decisions. It's also used in the communication capacity, so different stakeholder groups organize town hall meetings and invite community leaders in and use our mapping tool as a way to start the conversation about sea level rise and coastal flood risks. We're frequently in the media. We provide localized information for different states and towns. So frequently there are local stories of us in the paper or in national outlets as well. Different stakeholder groups use our data. So NGOs, advocacy groups, other kinds of coastal planning communities use our data, and we are looking into ways that our web tool can be used within FEMA's community rating system, which is a way for coastal communities to go above and beyond the NFIP requirements to get reductions in their flood insurance rates. And we're also looking into ways that we could be integrated into state resilience certification programs. So I'm rather than talk a lot more, I'm going to start showing you the web tool. But just to say quickly, it's based on peer-reviewed research. And here you can see the state landing page for Louisiana or for Mississippi. So each state has its own landing page. And you can see there are four main sections of the web tool. We've got the mapping portion, which provides you with analysis of what land is affected at different water levels. We have a forecast module that gives you the likelihood of a flood by a given decade or sea level rise projections. We have analysis. So what we have essentially done is we've collected as many federal data sets for the most part as we could across the country. So EPA data sets, census data sets, so population, roads, rails, hospitals, schools, and we've intersected those data sets with NOAA's LIDAR elevation data, which is a high resolution elevation data that they've compiled across the country. And through that intersection, we can give you the number of schools or hospitals or rail miles or road miles that are at risk at different water levels. We also can provide community comparisons, and you can see that we're looking at Texas here. They're different. It's broken down by county, but I'll show you more in a moment. And finally, we have downloadable reports for each location that you can print out. So I'm going to step away from the slides and move over to the tool. If you come to sealevel.climatecentral.org, you can click on the risk zone map on the right side and search for any location. So I'm going to search for New York. And it takes you to the map. You can zoom in quite a bit. And you'll see that the land that is blue is below whatever water level you've selected. So this is what you come to expect when you think of a web tool that deals with sea level rise. You'll notice on the left-hand side it says water level. We're not saying flooding or sea level rise because it could be from a combination of tides, sea level rise, and storm surge. And so we're keeping the map as to show simply the water level that is above the high tide line. So that is, we're using a bathtub model, and we're very consistent with NOAA. You'll notice on the right-hand side we have elevation data courtesy of NOAA, so we're in touch with NOAA quite a bit and appreciate all of the data sets they provided. You can click on data layers on the map to view additional information. So we have social vulnerability, which is a data set developed by Susan Cutter at the University of South Carolina and her research group there. They partnered with us on some of this on data development, and they've analyzed about 27 or 30 socioeconomic variables to determine which communities are prepared to deal with hazards such as coastal flooding. We have population density, so this is using census data. We have property value, which is the value of the property on that land, not the potential damage. Income level, and ethnicity. So that's also census data, ethnicity. So you can really zoom in quite a bit to your neighborhood. When you zoom in enough, you can see the names of the streets, buildings, homes, and you can also search for different locations. So let's just go to Ocean. We could go to Boston. Let's go to Boston. So I'm moving the map, coming into Boston, somewhere downtown Boston probably. I could zoom out to give you more context, but you'll see the names of streets. And what you can do, sometimes users or organizations embed the map, so they customize the map as they wish, set the water level, choose the data layer, and then click embed this map. You enter your name, caption, and URL, grab the code at the bottom, and you can plug it into your website. So it would appear like this on your site. So CNN has done that, and other news outlets have embedded it, but any organization can do so. Um, so just to keep on moving, there to get to another portion of our web tool, you can go back to the main site, sealevel.climatecentral.org, and click the risk finder, and then choose your state. So let's choose California, and we'll click Go. And here we are at the risk finder. This gets you back to the map, but let's go into the analysis section. Click on California or any link. So you click the tab at the top, and click any link, and you should notice that we have written reports for each state on the right-hand side, along with links to other resources that should be useful to provide more context. I can only cover so much in 20 minutes. So as you go into the analysis portion of our web tool, you'll see what I was talking about regarding all the data sets we've collected. So you see homes, fire and EMS stations, police stations, hospitals. And on the left-hand side, as you move the water slider up or down, you'll see that the total count of homes sitting on land below 7 feet or 8 feet goes up or down. You can also view percent of homes that across California that are below 7 feet. So this is a screening level tool to provide the coastal planning community with the ability to see really quickly what's at risk. So we have population broken down by different census categories, African American population, Asian population, Hispanic population, Native American, Caucasian population. If you click on a tile, you get more information about the methods and the sources, as well as how many of whatever data variable, in this case population, is on land below 7 feet. But we also break it out by what could potentially be protected by levees or natural ridges. And just walking through the data here, we have property value, socioeconomic information, infrastructure, so road miles, rail miles, broken down by state, federal, county roads where possible. We have railroad, rail miles, and most of these data sets, it's a wide range of data sources, and you can click and go to the source of the data, so we're transparent in terms of the data sources and methods. We have terminal stations, airports, energy, plants. So it's kind of the kitchen sink approach. We put as many data sets in here as we could find, assuming different groups would have uses for different data sets. So one way to think about using the tool is thinking about what data sets you're interested in, schools, hospitals, et cetera, coming in here, going to there, and then and in a moment you can choose kind of what boundaries you're interested in. Are you interested in the whole state or a town or a city? So here, just quickly, we're showing you EPA listed sites, landfills, brownfields, hazardous waste sites, sewage plants. I'm just listing these out because my understanding is some people listen on podcasts later. Wastewater sites, oil facilities, that kind of information. We have land area by acres. And so this is for California, but if you're interested in a particular city, let's say San Francisco, you can click search for San Francisco, and then we give you the analysis for San Francisco. So rather than show you the population for the entire state, we're showing it to you just for San Francisco. You could also, you search for let's think of other cities here. San Diego. So you can choose San Diego County if you're interested in the county level analysis. So another way to navigate through all of this is to click the comparison tab at the top. So just to take a big step back, if you go back to sealevel.climatecentral.org, click on Risk Finder, choose a state. So let's go to a different state now. We'll go down to Texas. Click Go. Click on the Analysis tab, or the Comparison tab, and click any link below. You're brought into the comparison part of the Risk Finder. You'll see that Texas is broken down by county here, but you could choose different boundaries. So you have the water slider on the left, then you have the impact where you choose, let's look at general population, then you click on areas. You can choose cities or counties, And this actually ranks the counties by the threat. So it looks like Jefferson County in Texas has the most number of people below 5 feet. But if you move the water slider up to 8 feet, looks like Galveston County has the most number of people below 8 feet. So on the right-hand side, you can get a sense of the rankings in terms of threat. And you can also choose to include levees or not. And it's not a complete levee database, but we're using the best available public data we could find from the national midterm levee database from Army Corps and FEMA. And so if you're interested in Galveston County, you can see here we have lots of information for each county. But here's some more boundaries you can choose. Zip code. So let's go to Galveston County for zip codes. Here's all the zip codes. So in 77563, there are 3,000 people below 8 feet. And if you click on any of these areas, and this is essentially a heat map. As you move the water slider up, you'll see that the darker the area means the more people are on land below whatever water level you're on. So you can click on the zip code, and then you come back to the analysis portion so you can get analysis for that particular zip code. But we also have legislative districts, congressional districts, for example. Here's Texas broken down by congressional districts, so you can get analysis for how many people live in the congressional district below X feet, or how many wastewater sites or roads or et cetera. We have state Senate districts, and not just for Texas, but for other states. We'll go to Boston. So now we're in Massachusetts, and you're looking at counties in Massachusetts, even though counties really are not used very much. Towns are really the administrative area that's used, and you can see Massachusetts by towns. But going back to the legislative districts, you can have Massachusetts broken down by state Senate districts, so you can search for a state Senate district and look for analysis for that and print out a report. We have state assembly districts for any state and for most of the states in the country. We have city council districts for some towns. We have some planning districts as well for different states. So you can really explore the areas portion of the website and choose different boundaries that might be of interest to you. And then once you find let's say you're interested in looking at Cambridge, you can click a fast look report up here and fill in your name, and your organization and your email, and we give you a PDF file that summarizes all the methods in our web tool. It's a 4-page document, defends everything in the tool. We're also starting to develop a streamlined version of this. I'll show you. Let's see if I have it here. You can see at the top, these are PDF files that we're starting to develop manually, but eventually we'll probably automate them. But we provide kind of a snapshot of what's at risk at a certain water level for a given location. So this is, you can see this is a generic template, but for this given location, say a town or a zip code at 5 feet, 6 billion of property, 13,000 homes, et cetera, and then we explain the methods as well as the likelihood of a flood at that water level and link back to the tool. So it's a very simple way to absorb this information. Then the user can come back to the tool and get more information. We have tutorial videos that explain how to use the website. You can click on those as well. But I do want to show you how you can download data as well. You can click this download button, fill in a form. So say you're interested in getting information about Cambridge or Massachusetts, or let's choose a different location. We'll go down to, let's see, Port Aransas. How about Rhode Island?
Yay!
Okay, I picked the right one. Rhode Island, we can download data for all of Rhode Island. Excuse me as I fill in my form here. And we collect information just to get a sense of who's using the tool and also why they're using the tool, so we can continue to make improvements. You'll see I'm prompted to download an Excel file, and gives you a document that looks like this, and so essentially anything in the tool can be downloaded, and you'll see all these about 100 different data variables: schools, hospitals, road miles, etc., along with the total count of how many are at risk from 1 to 10 feet, as well as the percentage. So this is for Rhode Island. You can also download, let's say you're interested in the number of schools in a given town. So we'll choose, I can't pronounce that town, but here's a town in Rhode Island. And we want to know the number of homes. I have to find a different boundary here. So the EPA sites, if you want to find all the EPA sites in a given town, you can click Data, and you can download the names of the actual facilities that are public information. We're just giving it to you in a new way. Or you could download the names of the schools. And in this kind of format of Excel format, you'll see we give you a column for water level as well as the name of the facility and the lat and long coordinates. So there's ways to get very localized information from the data downloads as well. I'll give you one more quick example. We'll choose another state. Go to New Jersey. And I'm going to choose public safety facilities. Or how about medical facilities? And we'll download data. And here's a list of all the medical facilities below, from 1 to 10 feet in the state of New Jersey, listed by name and water level. But you could download for any zip code in New Jersey, etc. Now I'll show you one more module of the web tool before I take questions, and that's the forecast module. This is the most complex module in our web tool. We have a video tutorial just on that. But essentially what we've done is we've taken our peer-reviewed research done by the scientists here at Climate Central. They looked at the NOAA tide gauges that had at least 30 years of hourly data, and they detrended that of sea level rise and did a statistical analysis to determine what a 100-year flood would be, or a 1% annual risk flood, or a 10-year flood, or an annual flood. And then essentially what this web portion of the web tool is doing is allowing you to plug in different sea level rise models, because they project these relationships forward and allow you to determine, based off of historical flood levels, what the likelihood of a flood of a certain water level reaching by a decade. So right now, the likelihood, we're looking at the battery tide gauge, and we're looking at the likelihood of a 5-foot flood. So we're looking at the total flood risk. So we explain it in the notes here, but that's the risk of at least one flood exceeding a certain height by a given year. So there's a 46% chance of a 5-foot flood by 2030, 69% chance by 2040, 87% by 2050. So you can move the water slider up and down to see the screening level forecast analysis. Obviously, there's less risk of a higher level of flood. And this is available for the whole country. The different, I'll go to North Carolina. So here's a tide gauge in Wilmington, and we also provide you with the annual flood risk. So this is the within year risk, the risk of at least one flood exceeding a certain height within a given year. So the risk of a 3-foot flood within the year 2060 is 50% in Wilmington. So it's interesting to see when the risk becomes more of a certainty, where you see these 100% values as you go farther out in time. We also provide you with basic sea level rise projections. So we see here, based on NOAA's intermediate high sea level rise scenario, which is kind of the middle level, there's about a 1-foot expected of 1 foot of sea level rise by 2050, 3.6 by 2100, you can go in and change the sea level rise model you want to use. So some states prefer using the Army Corps model, and as you move the settings, you can see that the values change. But what we've found is that sea level rise is already increasing the risk of coastal flooding in the shorter term. So you can see in this case in Wilmington, North Carolina, there's a big difference between the likelihood of a flood by a given decade. So there's a 55% chance of a flood by 2040 using the according to medium sea level rise scenario. If you take out sea level rise from climate change from the equation, the risk jumps down to 12% by 2040. So we can see how sea level rise is already increasing the risk of coastal flooding, in many cases more than doubling it. So that's the gist of our tool. We have other tools as well that we recently launched. Maybe I'll touch on them very quickly before I take questions. But if you go to sealevel.climatecentral.org, you can choose the risk zone map, which is the map I first showed you, or the risk finder, which is all this data that I was showing you. But you can also click mapping choices at the top right and choose a place. We'll choose Philadelphia. And we give you a split screen of what long-term sea level rise level we will lock in based off of different emissions projections. And you can see in a lot of cases there's a large difference. And this is a whole other peer-reviewed research study that that scientists on our team led with other scientists from other institutions. It was published in the proceedings for the National Academy of Sciences recently, and essentially lets you view the lock-in sea level rise based off of different emission scenarios, but also different temperatures. And you can choose which temperatures and see the difference in your city or state or county or coastline. And essentially, we title it Mapping Choices because it's depending on which emission scenarios we choose, we're locking in a certain amount of sea level rise in the long run. We don't know exactly when it will accumulate, but the science shows that it will accumulate. And so if you click when will this happen, first of all, you can actually download an image of any map. So if you want to show the different emission scenarios along with an image of your town or city and the contrast between a city that doesn't have a lot of flooding shown versus a lot with for example, with unchecked pollution, it may show there's a lot of a sea level rise covering your city, a lot of land below certain water level, and then with extreme cuts, I'm going to go back and choose scenarios here. I'll choose unchecked pollution and extreme carbon cuts. So this kind of demonstrates the two potential futures for a given city. So you can download an image of that using this icon here, the camera icon on the top right. But you can also click the When Will This Happen button just below that, and this gives you text to explain everything in the map in terms of the science behind it and the water levels, et cetera. So I could go on and on, but I think I'll leave it there. Essentially, the takeaway is everything is available for free at sealevel.climatecentral.org, and I'm available to answer questions after you have a chance to take a look at the web tool. You can reach me at drizza@climatecentral.org, so DRIZZA@climatecentral.org, and my phone number is 609-945-7821. So Ricky, maybe I'll stop there and take questions if that sounds okay to you.
Yeah, that sounds great. I give you a second to catch your breath there as well.
Okay, I'll take
a moment. That was get you a little drink of water. Wow, fantastic. I knew this tool was there. I just didn't know how in depth it was. So I think that was a really great demonstration of it. So what we'll do here, yeah, we'll stop for some questions. If you guys have a question for Dan, you can *1 to mute and unmute your phone, or click the little microphone symbol next to your name. I'll start it off, Dan, real quick. My question, I have a couple, but I'll ask one and then see if anybody else has any. My first question would be, when you were going and looking at the maps, just the maps, not the forecast module, but just the map, are those numbers and the structures and all that you went through, is that what would be impacted by a mean high tide, or is that also impacted, or is that as well have to do with the flood possibility?
Yeah. So we're using the bathtub model, which is kind of a simple threshold elevation model that NOAA also uses in its web tool. And essentially all we're doing is showing you land below X water level. So we start at the high tide line, the local high tide line of a given part of the coastline, and then we add feet on top of it. I had a good slide that showed that, but essentially that's what we're doing. So we start essentially at the local high tide line, and as you move the water slider, we're showing you land below, 8 feet above the high tide line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're not.
So you're taking current high tide now. You're taking the current high tide now, and then you're adding feet onto that, right?
The mean high water, the local high tide line. Yep, exactly. And we're not doing physical storm surge modeling in the maps, but it's a national tool. It's a screening level tool, and we're consistent with NOAA's web tool and data.
Sure. Okay, perfect. Anyone else have a question right now? Just like I said, *1 on your phone, or click the little microphone symbol next to your name.
There's another thing I wanted to mention too. If I could jump in and explain the levees a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
You'll see on this portion of the map that the red lines here. These are the levees that we've utilized. And you'll notice in the middle of the levee here, or even in some portions of the land, if I zoom in a little further, you'll see it's shaded light blue, kind of this hatch pattern. And that indicates that part of the land is potentially protected by the levee or natural ridges. In other words, the water, is not connected to the ocean. But if I move the water slider up, you may see that it turns dark blue. In this case, this portion of the top turned dark blue, which means that at least one pixel made it through here and flooded the region, if that makes sense. But this is I'm just wanted to explain what the red lines meant on the map. And we have lots of information more about that if you click the About and Terms on the bottom right-hand side, we have all the methods.
Another question I had, maybe it's in there, maybe I missed this, or maybe just, you didn't go through everything tonight, I understand. Is there a dollar amount attached to any of this? So from an economic perspective, to say, okay, in Texas, if the sea level rises, if we have a 5-foot rise in sea level, what amount of property or dollar amount are we talking about there? Is there anything in there built into this model?
We have a property value layer, and let me just show you quickly. I'll explain the methods behind that. It tallies the property value in 2012 dollars on land lower than the selected water level. It's based on the property value totals by census block group, and we assume that the value is evenly distributed across the land in the block group. And we base it off of a study done by Newman in 2011, and we link to that study. I believe these are some scientists from the EPA who have put this together, and it's showing you the value of the land, not the potential damage. So you can view that both on the map itself. If you click the map and you click the property tab at the bottom, you can see the different shades, the value per acre. So you can actually zoom in and find your neighborhood and see what the value is. But you can also go back to this analysis tool, the Risk Finder, and click the comparison tab and click property. And if you click into one of the counties, you can see the property value go up or down depending on your water slider. And you can click on that, and we give you details there. So you you could, if you're interested in the property in your town, for example, you can go in and click towns and then choose your county, let's say Aransas County in Texas, and then choose Rockport, which is a town within there, and then you can see, you click socioeconomy on the left, and you can see the property value for that given town. So you can really break it down by zip code, planning district, et cetera, or congressional district, legislative district, how much property value or people are below, X feet.
That's really cool. All right. Any other questions out there? Like I said, star one on your phone, or click the microphone symbol next to your name. Go ahead. Well, I'll have one more question if no one else has a question right now. The other question I would have is, say we're speaking with someone, be it the member of Congress or in the media. You were also showing like you could select different models as well, NOAA model or Army Corps of Engineers. Is the Army Corps of Engineer model, is that I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what's the most widely accepted or most trusted source, and maybe that varies in areas. Yeah,
that's a good question. It does vary across the country. I think, for example, in Florida they tend to use the Army Corps projections. In other parts of the country, I would say I've seen most people using the NOAA sea level rise projections, and those are the ones that we default to in most states. So when you come to the projections page, we default to NOAA's middle sea level rise scenario. But they're different models, and some different agencies prefer different models for their studies. But you can you can go in and change it, and I would say one way to use the tool is just to come in and click around and experiment, and then essentially go to the analysis portion of the tool, search for your location, and then click the fast look report to download the PDF file, because that will provide you with all of essentially everything that I've said on the phone in a printable format that you could share with anyone, be it an elected official or a planner or someone from the general public. And it also links back to the web tool. So there's a lot in the web tool, and this is a single narrative that explains it all and links back to the web tool within the context of the narrative and gives you a sense of what's at risk for that given location.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's you guys got to be really proud of this tool that you put together. It's really, really cool. So what we'll do as well, along with this lesson tonight, we'll have a page on our community website, which is a website we use for all of our education and stuff. And what I'll do is I think I'll circle back with you as well, and maybe get some tips that we can put on there for people as well on how to use the tool, or maybe just direct them to the tutorial that you already have set up. That'd probably be the easiest thing to do.
Sure. Ricky?
Yeah. Yeah, hey, go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, Craig Preston here, Southern California. Thank you. I got in the call late. I was on a different call, but I had a question about how to use it, and I think you just answered most of it. Is that it sounds like if we use the tool, we go in and find the area that we think would be most influential or most of interest to a certain political person, and then you're saying there's a way to then download a report, and then we can either print it or use it to email to them, but we can then it's in color or something, and it shows all these maps. Is that what you're saying?
So anyone from the general public or a different group can come to sealevel.climatecentral.org, click on the risk finder on the right hand side, choose your state. So let's choose Connecticut. You click go. You come into the risk finder. I'm just walking through the steps here. Then you can click on, one way to do it is you click on the analysis tab, and then you choose any location. Let's just choose Connecticut. Click that link, and that brings you to the analysis portion of our web tool. Then from this search engine, a search box on the top right, you can search for any town or county or legislative district, and you can also come into the comparison tab and look, like here's for Fairfield County, or you can click the areas tab here and choose a political district, congressional district, or state senate district. And so for any of these districts, if you click on them, you can see the analysis, and you can also go in here and click the fast look button on the top right, and and that will print out the PDF that I was showing you earlier. That will,
Great.
you can download that, and then you can share that.
Okay.
And also, I should mention, we're going to be launching a new version of our web tool that will have a camera icon on the top right of the map. So if you're on the map and you see your county or town, you can click the camera icon on the top right, and it'll prompt you to download a PNG file that you could share or use in a report of some kind, as long as you cite Climate Central.
You're saying it goes to a camera to a real life picture of what's going on in that area?
Here's an example. We have this mapping choices interface. There's a camera icon on the top right. Do you see that? I don't know if you can see my screen, but there's a little camera icon.
Yeah, I can.
And if you click it, you fill in the form, and it will download an image of the map you're looking at.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And
got
so
it.
that will be available for this kind of, this other map that I was showing you, the risk zone map. So if you go to sealevel.climatecentral.org, the other part of our tool is the risk zone map or the mapping choices map, either one of them. Click on there, search for your town, and you come into the map, and there'll be a camera icon in this map soon. You can download images of that.
Got it. So it's the picture icons, we take a picture of it, and then we can say this is what we want to show to somebody.
Right. It just gives you the image on your computer that you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm
you
available.
mentioned,
If anyone has questions, you can contact me, and I can walk you through it.
where was when you said there was a button to go to get a PDF report that would automatically prepare itself?
Yes. So if you go to, let's just start at the beginning again. sealevel.climatecentral.org. You click on the risk finder on the top on the right. And you select your state in the drop-down menu. Let's say Florida. Click Go. Then actually the fifth tab here is the green Fast Look Reports tab, and we highlight a few of the main cities here, counties. Click on Miami, and it'll actually give you the PDF for Miami, for example, right there.
Okay.
But you could also, I guess a good way to do it is click the Analysis tab, come into the tool from there, click anything below the Analysis tab. So now we're looking at Florida, and then basically as you could search for any location here. So let's choose Fort Lauderdale, or you could choose a city from another state. You click Fort Lauderdale, and then you click the green button, the Fast Look button on that page. It'll prompt you to fill in a form, and it'll give you the PDF for that location.
Okay. Great. And Ricky, a question for you. Do you know, I remember CCL passed out copies of the encyclical before the Pope visited. This seems like a great thing to send automatically to every member of Congress as just a tool, as we want to be a resource to them.
Yeah, it was funny when when Dan was going through this and you started talking about being able to download the data. Dan, one of the things we do is we have biographies that we have for every member of Congress, and we take certain data sets and we put those on the bios. Like one thing we did this year is we put the Yale Climate Opinion Maps data right on the bio, so when our volunteers went to lobby, they would have that information available to them, like what percentage of folks in the district believe that climate's happening or it's human caused, or all those different data sets. And I was going to ask you this offline, but I think that as long as we attributed it to you guys wouldn't, since it is downloadable, you wouldn't have any problem with us possibly adding that to the bios as well, to say, okay, not just that, here's how many different areas, or how the area would be impacted by certain levels of sea level rise. And maybe there's some limited data. We don't want to try to put everything on there, but maybe we can talk about how we can incorporate that with your permission, of course.
Yeah, we've developed this. It's a public web tool, so all of our research and data is available for anyone to use as they wish. So we don't take any policy positions at Climate Central.
Right.
But any group can come in and use our data, and I'm here to support the use of the tool and the data. So
okay.
So
we can talk about that later. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig. Great suggestion.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions out there from anybody? think everyone's probably playing with the tool right now. I know I am. So everyone's playing with it themselves. I appreciate that. All right. Well, Dan, I appreciate you joining us tonight and showing this to us. I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Did somebody say something? Yep. Oh. You guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure. There's Dan's phone number there on the screen as well. But I'll give it to you, folks, if you may be listening. It's 609-945-7821. His email again is DRIZZA, so Dan or D Rizza, at climatecentral.org. I appreciate you making yourself available tonight, but also making yourself available for any of us that may have questions. But that's it for tonight. Thanks so much for everyone for joining for CCL University, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Ricky.